Let us consider Engel's words in his critique of the Erfurt program. To my view, the program should be as short and precise as possible. No harm is done, even if it contains the occasional foreign word or a sentence whose full significance cannot be understood at first sight. Verbal exposition at meetings and written commentaries in the press take care of all that, and the short, precise phrase, once understood, takes root in the memory and becomes a slogan, a thing that never happens with verbose explanations. In the same document, however, he says, instead of class conscious, which in our circles is an easily understood abbreviation, I would say the following to facilitate universal understanding and translation into foreign languages, with the workers conscious of their class position, or something like it. PSL party program for the 2016 election. Generally, party programs shouldn't be mixed with commentary on the party program. For the earth to live isn't particularly tangible. Make a job of a constitutional right. Language of constitutionality is not appropriate for left-wing party. We shouldn't give the mistaken perception that we care what the Constitution has to say, or indeed that we believe that the bourgeoisie care what the Constitution has to say. On the third point, constitutional should be removed. Shut down all US military bases around the world. Bring all the troops, planes, and ships home. Probably the second half is unneeded. It should quite clearly follow from the first point. End racism, stop police brutality, and mass incarceration. End racism may be too lofty a goal for a party program. It's not tangible. It is quite difficult. Defend our unions is not specific enough, and perhaps it should just be, as it says later, repeal the Taft-Hartley Act. Full rights for all immigrants. This is unclear. Does that mean granting citizenship? In which case it should be stated, seize the banks, jail Wall Street criminals. I don't like this. It gives the impression that capitalists in general are not the problem, but bankers in particular. Bankers are a problem insofar as they are part of capitalism, and indeed there would be no bankers, at least not in any recognizable form, in a socialist system. In general, political reforms and economic reforms are not given sufficient space. Another note on the format. The party program should be very short, possible to be read by anyone in a few minutes at the very most. Party of Communists USA. This party program can't fulfill the function of a typical party program as a result of its length and inaccessibility. My biggest concern, however, is that it seems to lack a proper understanding of political economy. For example, it says, moreover, as capitalism develops, these wages are continually forced down by the overproduction of commodities. This is untrue. Wages do sometimes go up in capitalism, as well as going down, and the value of wages is not based upon the level of production of commodities. There is perhaps some argument that overproduction of commodities leads to crises, which lead to lower wages. But in general, the value of wages is the result of the class war between capitalists and workers. For over 150 years, this system has produced cyclical crises. This means that as production increases, the working people with their limited wages cannot afford to purchase the massive goods produced. This is again a misunderstanding. Ultimately, this doesn't explain how things work. It is certainly true that capitalism has produced crises in a fairly periodic manner. It is not, however, the case at all that as production increases, working people cannot afford to purchase the massive goods produced. It is more so the case that Many capitalists working independently have no way of predicting the level of demand and therefore end up overproducing and being unable to sell commodities at prices which justify production. Of course, this question is extremely complicated, and Marxist economists disagree. Left-wing political parties don't actually need to worry too much about this. It is sufficient to say there are cyclical crises, and we know how to stop them. Workers' World Party. End the war on black and brown people. Reparations now. Stand with and defend the Black Lives Matter movement. In my opinion, the first few points on a program at the least should be universal. And obviously, I agree with the sentiment here. Abolish capitalism, fight for a socialist revolution. Too broad and, again, probably a bit hard to relate to. Additionally, fight for a socialist revolution doesn't belong in a party program. That is a conviction of the party, perhaps, but not what a party would do in power. Stop the deportations and raids, full rights for all immigrants, end Islamophobia, open the borders for people, close the borders for profiteers and warmongers. Stop the deportations and raids is very specific. It should be said specifically what is meant by full rights. And end Islamophobia, how is that to be achieved? Additionally, it's worth noting that a socialist country can't have strictly open borders with non-socialist countries for fairly self-evident reasons. Of course, there's quite a bit of space between the US current immigration policy and open borders. Food, water, housing, clothing, healthcare, education, and childcare for all. This is extremely long with solidarity with homeless people. Perhaps better to say, no more homeless people. Free education for all, full funding for public schools. This is essentially just a repetition of the previous education for all. Women need full liberation in all facets of society, equal pay for comparable work, reproductive justice, including the right to abortion, restore all welfare programs. The welfare programs were never sufficient. This would be encapsulated in a previous point already. Perhaps rephrasing could make this shorter without losing any of the intention. Change the system, not the climate. Make the Pentagon and the oil corporations pay for the destruction of the planet. Reparations for climate victims of Hurricane Katrina and elsewhere. Immediate support for climate refugees. Free the land. It's unclear if this means in other countries, and if so, it should be stated. And it's probably unnecessary to include the example of Hurricane Katrina. Saying make the Pentagon and oil corporations pay is more or less incompatible with other points. If capitalism is to end, what oil corporations are there to pay? The state, which appropriated and manages those oil corporations, would pay. Defeat imperialism. Shut down the Pentagon. US hands off Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Build international solidarity. The previous point, make the Pentagon and oil corporations pay for the destruction of the planet. If there is no Pentagon, how will it pay? It's important that a party program is internally consistent. I'm not certain it's necessary to be specific about the various locations that US imperialism currently operates. Full employment and decent jobs or income for all, regardless of race, religion, age, gender, disability, or arrest history, and all forms of austerity worldwide. Support the movement for $15. And a union. Abolish right to work laws. Repeal Taft-Hartley. Stop killing disabled people, especially those with emotional disabilities. Point in the program is thrown off when something that doesn't relate is added to the end. Ending austerity worldwide is certainly ambitious and unclear what that even means. It's sufficient to say guarantee full employment